let's explore Terrible Friend and 7 other poems. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso. Welcome to Meditate Like a Jedi. Today's first poem, Terrible Friend. This morning I had the very good fortune to meet a new neighbor. Zach is a lovely fellow who is the spitting image of a late friend who passed away back in 1997. Zach looks as if he could have been the long-lost son of my long-lost friend, Aubrey. I was a terrible friend to Aubrey. We were introduced when we were each neck deep in Christian fundamentalism. And as an enthusiastic student of patriarchy, I was often a judgmental, manipulative, and overbearing dick to him. In the fullness of time, I had my head surgically removed from my ass. I did my best to repair our friendship and to be there for him however I could. I left Christian fundamentalism, fell into Buddhist fundamentalism, climbed back out, and have spent the rest of my days as a Buddhist liberal. I was heartbroken when his wife called to tell me of his illness. That night, I performed every tantric ritual I knew on his behalf, but the next morning came and she pulled the plug. The very first time I practiced the POWA, transference of consciousness ritual, was on behalf of Aubrey, who had considered himself the descendant of Caribbean pirates and who loved Star Wars as much as I. Aubrey was buried with a treasured Star Trek novel of mine, and also with my heart. Today's second poem, The Difference. It is a mistake to confuse clever gainsay for insightful discourse. Sapiosexuals who value mind, heart, and humor over face, form, and an easy lay have learned to discern the difference. And today's third poem, From Afar. Not everyone we love will love us back. But if we can persist in loving, if we can persist in wishing them well, without intention, without agenda, from afar, like Cyrano de Bergerac whispering from the shadows, our crotch may whine, but our heart will grow. Love. Love. All healthy mammals are made of the stuff. So be ye not surprised when you love others or when others love you, for it is part of our factory-installed programming. Today's fourth poem, Howl and Puff. The sleek black Tom strutted slowly outside the window. Within, 2 cats howled and puffed in desire, aggression, or both, for avarice and aversion share the same real estate, both calling the brainstem home. Today's fifth poem, How. Oh, my love, you give so much and ask so little. How could I ever say no to a simple request that might shipwreck my health? For you give so much and ask so little. How could I ever say no? Today's sixth poem, Undermining. Patriarchy specializes in exploiting good-hearted folks, self-righteously and piously undermining their wholesome goals with methods that force them into their brainstem and keep them in there with no way out. Methods that stimulate fear and righteous anger and ambitious greed. Greed for power, for possessions, for accomplishments. Thus, tearing folks out of their midbrain and shoving them into the abyss of the brain stems. Out of centeredness and into scatteredness. Out of spontaneity and into contrivance, out of passive mindfulness and into active concentration, out of vulnerable observation and into minute analysis, out of permissiveness and into control. These are the way patriarchy pulls us out of our midbrain, the ladder to nirvana, and chains us to our brainstem, thus shackling us to the stress of samsara. Some do this maliciously. More often than not, it is done ignorantly. Today's seventh poem, Teflon Coated. Here is a funny thing about Buddha's teachings. They appear to be Teflon coated. In 9th century China, Wuzong persecuted Buddhists, yet we're still here. In 9th century Tibet, Long Dharma persecuted Buddhists, yet we're still here. In 12th century India, Zha Lao persecuted Buddhists, yet we're still here. In 20th century China and Tibet, party officials persecuted Buddhists, yet we're still here. Personally, I have had several petty potentates strive to prevent me from receiving instruction, empowerment, and ordination. And yet I have received all three many times over. Though I am disabled, I live. Though many teachers forsook me as the collateral damage to Tibetan politics, when I could find no teacher of flesh, blood, and bone, Buddhas gave me the sky treasure of direct instruction. Like the paintings we see of the Tibetan saint Mila, with his palm cocked behind his ear, and the gesture known as the cotton-clad one, hearkening to the whispers of the Dharmakaya, the Buddhist version of the Christian Holy Spirit, or what Carl Gustav Jung would describe as the collective unconscious. There was a time I went without food. No, I do not. There was a time I could acquire neither statues nor books. Now I get to write them. Despite all the petty tyrannies of the cruel and small-minded, I am still here, while many of them have passed on. It really is safe to study the teachings and practice the teachings and be defined by the teachings. At least it has been so for me. Today's 8th and final poem, Long Enough. It has been said that if you sit by the river's edge long enough, you will see the body of your worst enemy float by. But what does that mean? In some regions of India, cremation was commonplace. At one's death, one's body would be burned, rendered to ash, and classically floated upon a miniature raft down the river in hopes of it eventually reaching the sea. The idea is that if we are not the great avenger, the righter of wrongs, or those who've done us wrong will come to their own ends, but so will we. The cliché that the best revenge is a life well lived is more true than not. For who suffers more, the man of peace, acquainted with occasional misfortune, or the man who burns with unquenchable hate and a lust for conquest and possessions that can never be sated? We don't have to punish those who have wronged us, for they shall wrong themselves. They shall hoist themselves upon the petards of their greed, fear, and malice, like a saboteur blown up by his own explosives. When cruelty is visited upon us, and there is no doubt it is a certitude, we, like a fool, can dig a grave for ourselves and another for our quarry and set off on our soul-destroying quest for vengeance. Or we can take our lumps, turn to the spiritual path, and heal our scars of fear and rage. These paths are mutually exclusive, for you can only select one. May we therefore choose wisely, always. Let us conclude with a simple call to action. This podcast will never have any advertisements, so support us monthly on PayPal and like us on your podcast service to help others find us just as you found us as well. If meditation has felt impossible, boring, or just out of reach, you are welcome to register for the next series of live online meditation class webinars that meet once a week.